I starved myself for months to buy Mom that vintage sapphire pendant. Seeing it around my sister Bianca's neck while Mom smiled was the final straw. I didn't scream, I just stopped paying their bills. When the foreclosure notice arrived, the real crying started. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The burn on my forearm was still throbbing, a fresh, angry red stripe I'd earned 3 hours ago on the sauté station. It was a stupid mistake, the kind you make when you're running on 4 hours of sleep and too much caffeine, but I didn't mind the pain. Actually, I barely felt it. I was vibrating with a kind of nervous, exhausted energy that felt almost like a high. I sat in my beat-up sedan in the driveway of my mother's house, clutching a small, velvet-wrapped box like it was the Holy Grail. Inside was a necklace. It wasn't just any necklace, and it certainly wasn't something I could afford on a Junior Sue's chef salary, not easily anyway. It was a vintage sapphire pendant, Art Deco style, with a delicate platinum chain. Mom, Sylvia, had pointed it out in an antique shop window nearly 6 months ago. She had sighed that dramatic, tragic sigh of hers, the one that usually signaled she was about to ask me to pay a utility bill, and said, "It's the kind of piece a woman wears when she's truly made it, whatever that means." She had looked so small then, so wistful. That image stuck with me. For 4 months, I had picked up every extra shift available. I covered for the prep cooks when they called out hungover. I stayed late to help with inventory. I ate family meal leftovers instead of grocery shopping. I essentially deleted my social life. My boyfriend Matthew had been patient, though he worried about me. "You're running yourself into the ground for her, Maria," he'd said gently last week as I iced my swollen ankles. "I hope she appreciates it." "She will," I had promised him and myself. "This is big, Matt. This is the thank you she deserves for raising us alone." I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, dark circles under my eyes, hair frizzy from the kitchen humidity, and stepped out of the car. It was Sylvia's 60th birthday dinner. I was 20 minutes late because the dinner rush had been brutal, but I had the gift. That was all that mattered. I walked up the path, the gravel crunching under my non-slip work shoes. I could hear laughter coming from inside. It was a loud, boisterous laugh I recognized instantly. Caleb. He was my younger sister Bianca's manager, though as far as I could tell, his primary job was taking photos of her holding smoothies and driving her around in the car I helped pay for. I opened the front door. "Happy birthday," I called out, forcing a brightness into my voice that my body didn't feel. The dining room was fully set. Sylvia sat at the head of the table, looking radiant in a cream-colored dress I'd bought her last Christmas. To her right was Bianca, and to her left was Caleb. They were already eating. The appetizers, expensive imported cheeses and charcuterie that I knew Sylvia couldn't afford, were half demolished. "Oh, look who decided to join us," Bianca said, not looking up from her phone. She was typing furiously, her long, manicured nails clicking against the screen. "We thought you got stuck scrubbing pots or something." "Traffic," I lied, stepping into the warm light of the dining room. "And we don't scrub pots, we manage the line. Hi, Mom." I walked over to Sylvia and kissed her cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and wine. "Glad you made it, Maria," she said, though her eyes flicked immediately to the small box in my hand. "Is that for me?" "It is," I smiled, my heart hammering. "I know I'm late, but, well, I wanted to give you this before we really started eating." I placed the velvet box in front of her. The room went quiet. Even Caleb stopped chewing. Bianca finally looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. Sylvia opened the box slowly. I held my breath, waiting for the gasp, the tears, the validation that I was a good daughter, that the burns and the sleepless nights were worth it. Sylvia stared at the sapphire pendant. She blinked. Then, a strange, tight smile appeared on her lips. She didn't take it out of the box. She didn't clasp it around her neck. "It's beautiful, Marya," she said. Her tone was polite. Strangely, devastatingly polite. Very vintage. "It's the one from the shop," I said, my voice faltering slightly. "The Art Deco one. You said it looked like something a woman wears when she's made it." "Did I?" Sylvia laughed, a tinkling. "Airy sound. I say so many things, but thank you, sweetie, it's very thoughtful." She closed the box and set it aside next to the butter dish. "Now sit, the risotto is getting cold." I stood there, frozen. The reaction was wrong. It was all wrong. It was too lukewarm for something that cost me 4 months of my life. "Mom," Bianca said, her voice sharp and commanding. "Show Caleb the thing. The lighting is perfect right now." "Oh, right." Sylvia clapped her hands, her face lighting up with genuine excitement, an emotion completely absent when she looked at my gift. "Marya, move out of the way, honey. You're blocking the light." I stepped back, confused. Sylvia turned her head, angling her chin up. And that's when I saw it. Resting against Sylvia's collarbone, glittering under the chandelier light, was a thin, cheap gold chain. But hanging from it wasn't a gemstone. It was a custom nameplate necklace, written in a tacky, oversized cursive script that spelled Queen. "Bianca got it for me," Sylvia gushed, touching the cheap metal as if it were a crown jewel. "She had it custom made. Isn't it fun? It's so youthful." "It's for the cool mom aesthetic we're building for her Instagram," Bianca explained, finally looking at me with a smirk. "I'm going to tag her. We're doing a whole series. Queens Raising Queens." "That's nice," I managed to say, sliding into my seat. I looked at the velvet box sitting ignored by the butter. "I just thought, the sapphire is real. It's platinum." "Materialism isn't everything, Marya," Caleb chimed in, pointing a fork at me. "It's the thought that counts. Bianca put thought into her brand." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Okay, I told myself. She's wearing Bianca's gift because they're doing a social media thing. She'll wear mine later. It's fine. I tried to eat. I tried to listen to Caleb talk about his vision for a podcast. But 15 minutes later, the real blow landed. "Oh, Marya," Sylvia said, her mouth full of risotto. "I almost forgot. Since you bought that lovely antique thing, Bianca was saying it would actually match her outfit for the gala next weekend perfectly. The blue brings out her eyes." I froze, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. "What?" "The necklace," Sylvia said, gesturing vaguely to the velvet box. "I think I'm going to let Bianca borrow it, just for a while. It's a bit too heavy for me to wear daily, but it's perfect for Bianca's aesthetic." I looked at Bianca. She was grinning, a predatory, satisfied grin. "Thanks, sis," Bianca said. "I didn't have anything blue. You really came through." The room seemed to tilt. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say she was joking. Waiting for her to say, "No, this is my special gift from my hardworking daughter. I would never hand it over to her sister 5 minutes after receiving it." But Sylvia just smiled at Bianca, eyes full of adoration. "You're going to look stunning, Marya. Aren't you happy you could help your sister look her best?" The betrayal hit me harder than the heat of the stove ever had. It wasn't just the theft of the necklace. It was the theft of the meaning. It was the realization that my sacrifice was nothing more than an accessory for Bianca's life. The taste of the risotto turned to ash in my mouth. I set my fork down with a deliberate clink that echoed in the sudden silence of the room. My hands were trembling, not from fatigue this time, but from a cold, sharp clarity that was washing over me. "You're giving it to her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I haven't even seen you wear it yet. I just gave it to you." Sylvia rolled her eyes, a gesture so familiar it made my stomach churn. "Oh, stop being so dramatic, Marya. It's a necklace, not a kidney. Bianca has a verified appearance at the Founders Gala. She represents the family. She needs to look the part." "I represent the family too," I said, though I knew as the words left my mouth that they weren't true in this house. "I worked double shifts for 4 months to buy that." "And we appreciate it," Caleb said, reaching for a bread roll. "Really, Hustle culture is valid. Bianca laughed. God, Maria, why do you always have to make everything about how hard you work? It's gauche. If you wanted it for yourself, you should have kept it. But you gave it to Mom. It's hers. She can do what she wants with it. She reached across the table, her manicured fingers snatching the velvet box. She snapped it open. Ooh, yeah, it is real platinum. This will look sick with my navy dress. She pulled the necklace out, dangling my blood, sweat, and tears in the air like a trinket from a gumball machine. Put it on now, Bea, Sylvia squealed, clapping her hands again. Let's see. I watched, paralyzed, as Bianca unclasped the cheap queen necklace and tossed it onto the table, then fastened my sapphire pendant around her neck. Gorgeous, Caleb said, snapping a photo with his phone. Stunning, say. Elvia agreed, staring at Bianca with a look of pure worship. I sat there invisible. I was the wallet. I was the mule. I was the background noise to the Bianca show. I need to go, I stood up abruptly. My chair screeched against the hardwood floor. What? Sylvia looked annoyed, her perfect picture disturbed. We haven't even had cake. Bianca bought a gluten-free vegan cake. I'm not hungry, I said. I grabbed my purse. I have an early shift. You always have a shift, Bianca muttered, admiring herself in her phone camera. So boring. Maria, don't be like this, Sylvia said, her voice dropping into that guilt-inducing register she had mastered decades ago. It's my birthday. You're going to ruin the mood because you're jealous of your sister. Jealous, I laughed, a short, dry sound that hurt my throat. No, Mom, I'm not jealous, I'm just done. Done with what? Sylvia asked, narrowing her eyes. Just done, I said. I walked to the door. I didn't hug them. I didn't say goodbye. As I reached the handle, I heard Bianca say loudly, God, she's such a buzzkill. Whatever, Mom, let's take a selfie with the necklace. I closed the door on their laughter. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, just breathing. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Matthew. How did it go? Did she love it? I couldn't answer him. I couldn't tell him that the $2,500 symbol of my love was currently being filtered for an Instagram story by the sister who hadn't worked a real job in 3 years. I started the car and drove. As the house faded in the rearview mirror, the house where I had paid to fix the roof last year, the house where I paid the landscaping bill every month because Sylvia claimed her arthritis prevented her from gardening, a thought solidified in my mind. They thought I was just the quiet, hardworking Maria, the one who complained but always paid, the one who sought approval through checks and favors. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't just the daughter who paid the bills. I was the only one who knew where the money actually came from, and more importantly, I was the only one who knew about the letter sitting in my apartment. The one from the county tax assessor that Sylvia had ignored for 6 months, and which I had been quietly saving up to resolve before the deadline next month. They had the necklace. They had the aesthetic. But they didn't have the passcode to the online banking, and they certainly didn't have the $8,000 needed to stop the tax lien. When I got back to the apartment I shared with Matthew, I didn't cry. I think I had cried enough over Sylvia and Bianca in my 20s. Now, at 27, the tears had dried up, replaced by a cold, hard exhaustion. Matthew was on the couch grading papers. He looked up, smiling, but his expression dropped the moment he saw my face. That bad? He asked, setting his glasses down. Worse, I said. I kicked off my shoes and walked to the kitchen island. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. Bianca is wearing the necklace. Matthew paused. You mean Sylvia let her try it on? No, I said, taking a sip. I mean Sylvia gave it to her, 5 minutes after I opened the box, because it fits Bianca's brand better. And Sylvia is wearing a piece of scrap metal Bianca bought her that says Queen. Matthew stood up and walked over to me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. He didn't say I told you so, though he had every right to. He just held me. I'm sorry, Maria. It's cruel. It's just cruel. It is, I agreed, but it's clarifying. I pulled away gently and walked to the desk where we kept our mail. I shuffled through the stack until I found the envelope with the red stamp. County Tax Assessor, Final Notice. "What are you doing?" Matthew asked. "I was going to pay this on Friday," I said, tapping the envelope. "The house is in Mom's name, but she hasn't paid property taxes in 2 years. She hides the letters. I found this one when I was over there fixing her sink last month. I set up a payment plan under my name to save the house from going to auction." "And?" Matthew asked, though I could see he knew where this was going. "And," I said, looking at the bold red text, "I'm not going to pay it." "Maria," Matthew said, "if you don't pay it, they could lose the house." "I know," I said, "but if I pay it, I can't afford rent this month because I spent my savings on that necklace. I was going to ask you to cover the rent so I could save Mom." Again. Matthew looked at me, his eyes soft. "You know I would have covered us, I always do." "I know," I said, "but why should you? Why should we struggle so Bianca can play dress-up and Mom can play the grand dame?" I sat down at the computer and logged into the utility portal. "Welcome, Maria. Amount due, $340. That was the electric bill for Sylvia's house. Delete autopay. Confirm." Next tab, the landscaper. Cancel service. Confirm. Next tab, Sylvia's car in Sura. NCE. Remove saved payment method. Confirm. "I'm done, Matt," I said, my voice gaining strength with every click. "I'm done being the safety net. I'm done being the bank." "They're going to notice," Matthew warned. "Not immediately, but soon." "Good," I said. "Let them notice." For the next 3 weeks, I went ghost. I didn't call. I didn't text. I blocked Bianca and Caleb on all social media because I couldn't bear to see my necklace in their stories. At first, it was quiet. They didn't reach out because they didn't need anything yet. They were probably assuming I was sulking and would get over it, just like I always did. But then the calendar turned. The first of the month came and went. On day 21, my phone buzzed while I was prepping vegetables at the restaurant. It was Sylvia. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Then Bianca called, then Sylvia again. I finished my shift, washed my hands, and walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at my phone. 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I pressed play on the first one from Sylvia. "Maria, pick up. The electric company sent a notice saying the bill is overdue. I think your card expired or something. Call them and fix it, the lights flickered today. Love you." Casual, entitled, assuming it was a glitch. I pressed play on the second one. "Maria, seriously. The gardener didn't show up today. The lawn looks atrocious and Caleb wanted to do a shoot in the garden tomorrow. What is going on? Call me back." Annoyed, impatient. I pressed play on the third one. This one was different. "Maria," Sylvia's voice was high-pitched, cracking, she was crying. "Maria, please pick up. There's a man here, he put a notice on the door, a sheriff's deputy. He says the house is being seized for back taxes. He says we have 30 days to vacate. Maria, you said you handled the taxes. You said everything was fine. What is happening? Call me." I listened to the sobbing on the other end. For the first time in my life, her tears didn't make my chest tighten with guilt. They didn't make me want to rush over and fix it. I looked at the phone. I thought about the sapphire necklace around Bianca's neck. I thought about the Queen nameplate. I texted Matthew, "It's starting." Then I put the car in gear and drove home. I wasn't going to call her back. Not tonight. Let them sit in the dark for a bit. I didn't call back that night. I didn't call back the next morning either. The silence from my end was a calculated weapon, though at first it felt like holding my breath underwater. Every time my phone vibrated, my heart would lurch into my throat, a conditioned response from a decade of jumping whenever Sylvia snapped her fingers. But then I would look at the screen, see Mother or Bianca or Caleb, and I would force myself to exhale and swipe the notification away. By the second day of the sheriff incident, the texts shifted from panic to rage. "Bianca, you are literally ruining my life right now. I can't film content if we have to pack boxes. Where are you? Sylvia, I raised you better than this. To abandon your family in a crisis. After everything I sacrificed for you, the neighbors are talking, Maria. They saw the notice. I sat at the kitchen island in my apartment, reading the messages out loud to Matthew. He was grading papers, his red pen hovering over a student's essay, but his jaw was set tight. She's playing the sacrifice card, Matthew noted, not looking up. That's usually the ace in the hole, isn't it? Usually, I said, putting the phone face down. Usually, that's the part where I apologize for being born and write a check. But the checking account is empty, Matt. I literally couldn't help them right now if I wanted to. That's the irony. They bled me dry, and now they're mad there's no blood left to clean up their mess. I needed to be sure, though. I needed to know exactly how deep the hole was before I even considered speaking to them. I couldn't rely on Sylvia's hysterical interpretation of a legal notice. She was known to exaggerate a paper cut into an amputation if it got her sympathy. I'm going to the county clerk's office tomorrow before my shift, I told Matthew. I need to see the lien with my own eyes. I need to know if it's really a foreclosure timeline or just a warning. Do you want me to come? He asked. No, I said, standing up and walking to the window. I need to do this alone. I need to see the numbers in black and white without her voice in my ear telling me it's not her fault. The next morning, the county clerk's office smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. I waited in line for 20 minutes, clutching my purse, feeling like an imposter. When I finally got to the window, the clerk, a tired-looking woman named Brenda, looked up the property address. Ah, yes, Brenda said, adjusting her glasses. The Rodriguez property. We've sent 4 notices, ma'am, the laws. T1 was the notice of intent to sell. So it's real, I whispered. How much is the total due? Brenda tapped a few keys and printed a document. She slid it under the glass partition. With penalties and interest, you're looking at $8,432. To stop the auction, we need at least 50% by the 15th of this month. The rest can be on a payment plan. I stared at the number, $8,432. It wasn't a fortune to a millionaire, but to a single mother who worked part-time as a receptionist, which was what Sylvia supposedly did. It was insurmountable. But then I looked at the date the taxes first went unpaid. It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Sylvia had told me she needed $3,000 for emergency dental work. I had given it to her. 18 months ago, she needed $2,000 because her car transmission blew. I paid the mechanic directly, or so I thought. I had given her the cash because the mechanic only took cash. I felt a cold chill spread through my chest. The dates lined up perfectly. Every time the tax bill would have been due, a crisis had occurred where she extracted the exact amount from me. Can I get a printout of the payment history? I asked, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Or the lack thereof. Sure, Brenda said. I left the office with a thick manila envelope. It wasn't just a tax bill anymore. It was a timeline of deception. I sat in my car in the parking lot and opened the banking app on my phone, not mine, but Sylvia's. I had set up her online banking 5 years ago because she didn't understand computers. I realized, with a jolt of adrenaline, that I had never removed the login credentials from my password manager. I logged in. The balance was $42.18. I started scrolling through the transaction history, cross-referencing with the tax dates on the paper in my lap. March 15th, tax due date, withdrawal $200. March 16th, Lux Spa and Wellness, $450. March 17th, Apple Store, $1,200 Bianca's new iPad. March 20th, Ticketmaster, $600 concert tickets. There it was. The money I had given her for the mechanic and the dentist hadn't gone to those things. And the money she should have been saving for taxes, it was gone. All of it. Funneled into maintaining the illusion of a wealthy life for her and Bianca. I wasn't just the daughter who paid the bills. I was the mark. I was the victim of a long con run by my own mother. I closed the folder. I had the leverage. I knew the truth. They thought I was ghosting them because of a necklace. They had no idea I held the autopsy report of their financial ruin in my hands. I pulled into the driveway 3 days later. It was a Saturday. The grass was already looking shaggy. The best lawn on the block, award Sylvia coveted so much, was about to be revoked, just like her ownership of the house. I walked up to the door. I didn't use my key. I rang the bell. It took a full minute before the door was yanked open. Sylvia stood there, wearing a silk robe that I knew cost $200. Her face was blotchy, her eyes rimmed with red, but the moment she saw me, the sorrow instantly hardened into anger. "You have some nerve," she hissed, stepping back to let me in. "Do you know what kind of week I've had? I've been sick, Maria, physically sick from the stress. And you just vanished." I walked past her into the living room. It was a mess. Takeout containers were piled on the coffee table, expensive Thai food from the place downtown. "I didn't vanish," I said calmly, clutching the manila envelope against my chest. "I was working. I picked up 6 extra shifts." "Good," Sylvia threw her hands up. "Then you have the money? You can fix this. The man said we need $4,000 by next week or they start the auction process. You have to transfer it today, Maria. Right now." She pointed to her laptop, which was open on the dining table. I stayed standing. "I don't have it, Mom." Sylvia froze. "What do you mean you don't have it? You always have savings. You're the responsible one. Ask Matthew. Ask your father's side of the family. I don't care, just fix it." "I had savings," I corrected her. "I had exactly $3,000 saved up 3 weeks ago. It was in my emergency fund." "Well," Sylvia demanded, "where is it?" "I spent it," I said. "On what?" she screeched. "What could you possibly need that is more important than your mother's house?" I looked her dead in the eye. A vintage sapphire necklace. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Sylvia's mouth opened, then closed. She blinked rapidly. The gift," she whispered. "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "I had a choice, Mom. I saw that tax notice on your desk a month ago. I knew this was coming. I started saving every penny to pay it off for you as a surprise. But then, your birthday was coming up. And you wanted that necklace. You talked about it for months. You said it was the only thing that would make you feel special." I took a deep breath, letting the lie, or rather, the partial truth, hang in the air. "So I made a choice. I could pay your taxes, or I could buy the gift you desperately wanted. I chose the gift. I spent the tax money on the necklace." Sylvia's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. You stupid girl, you spent our house money on jewelry." "It's not jewelry," I said, mimicking her tone from the birthday dinner. "It's a legacy piece. It's for a woman who has made it. Remember." "I need that money," Sylvia screamed, grabbing a pillow and throwing it at the couch. "You have to take it back, return it, get the cash back right now." "I can't," I said simply. "Why not?" "Because," I said, looking toward the hallway where Bianca had just emerged, looking sleepy and annoyed. "It's currently being used for Bianca's brand aesthetic. Isn't that right?" Bianca froze, her hand flying to her throat. She was wearing the sapphire pendant. It was tangled with 2 other gold chains, looking cluttered and cheapened by the styling, but it was there. "What is going on?" Bianca asked, looking between us. "Why is everyone yelling?" "Your sister," Sylvia pointed a shaking finger at me, "wasted the money meant for our taxes on that necklace. She prioritized a trinket over a roof over our heads. She's trying to make us homeless." Bianca's eyes went wide. She looked down at the necklace, then back at me. "Wait, this is why the sheriff came? Because you bought this?" "Basically," I said. "So, if you want to save the house, you'll need to give it back to me so I can sell it to a pawnbroker. I won't get full price, maybe half, but it's a start." Bianca clutched the pendant tighter. "No, I already posted it. I have a partnership pending with a jewelry brand because of the engagement on my last reel. I can't just stop wearing it, it's my signature piece now. Are you serious? Sylvia turned to Bianca, then back to me. She was cornered. She couldn't demand Bianca give it up without shattering the golden child illusion, but she couldn't let the house go. You're lying, Sylvia spat at me. You have more money, you always do. You're just doing this to punish me because I let Bianca wear it. You're petty, Maria. You're a petty, jealous little girl. I'm not the one who spent the tax money on iPads and spa days, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Sylvia went still. What did you say? I opened the manila envelope. I pulled out the spreadsheet I had created, the one highlighting the withdrawals. I know, Mom, I said. I know you had the money, I know you spent it, and now you want me to pay for it again. The moment I laid the spreadsheet on the table, the dynamic in the room shifted from chaotic to dangerous. Sylvia didn't look at the paper. She looked at me with a cold, predatory focus. You went into my accounts, she said softly. That's illegal. That's an invasion of privacy. It's an account I set up for you, I reminded her. And considering I'm the one who deposits money into it every month to cover your car payment, I think I have a right to see where the leak is. Get out, Sylvia whispered. With pleasure, I said. But the sheriff will be back in 3 weeks. And unless you have $8,000 hidden in those designer shoeboxes, you're going to lose the house. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Sylvia shouted, her voice rising to a frantic pitch, don't you dare think you're part of this family anymore. I will tell everyone. I will tell your Aunt Sarah, your Uncle Mike, everyone that you stole from me. That you hacked my accounts and left your mother on the street. Tell them, I said, not looking back. But make sure you tell them about the necklace, too. I walked out. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my car, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I thought the threat was empty. I was wrong. By that evening, my phone was blowing up, but it wasn't Sylvia this time. It was Aunt Sarah, then my cousin Ricky, then Uncle Mike. Aunt Sarah, Maria, I just got off the phone with your mother. I am appalled. How could you refuse to help her? She says you locked her out of her own bank account. Uncle Mike, kid, I know you and Sylvia have issues, but letting the house go? That's your father's house. You really going to let the state take it out of spite? Then came the notification that made my stomach drop. Facebook. Bianca had posted a life update. It was a photo of her and Sylvia, hugging, looking teary-eyed. The caption read, "It's so hard when the people you trust the most turn out to be toxic. Broken heart, we're facing a huge crisis right now because someone we loved decided to manipulate our finances and leave us high and dry. We might lose our childhood home. Please send prayers for my mom. She's so strong, but she's heartbroken by this betrayal. Family drama, betrayal, toxic family, need a prayer." The comments were flooding in. OMGWH. Oh, is this about your sister? Stay strong, queen. Karma will get them. I sat on my couch, the blue light of the phone illuminating the dark room. They're controlling the narrative, Matthew said, reading over my shoulder. They're isolating you. If you don't fight back, the whole family is going to cut you off. I know, I said. They're trying to shame me into paying. It's a pressure campaign. I looked at the comments again. Bianca had replied to one. It's complicated, but let's just say jealousy is an ugly disease. Okay, I said, standing up. They want to make this public. Let's make it public. What are you going to do? Matthew asked. I'm going to call a family meeting, I said. Aunt Sarah, Uncle Mike, all of them, Sunday dinner. Sylvia loves an audience. Let's give her one. I sent a mass text to the family group chat, which I had been muted in for months. Maria, I see there's a lot of confusion about what's happening with Mom's house. I want to clear the air. I'm coming over on Sunday at 1 p.m. with the financial records to explain exactly why the taxes weren't paid. I think everyone deserves to know the truth before any money is borrowed or donated. See you there. The response was immediate. Sylvia, you are not welcome here. Aunt Sarah, I think that's a good idea, Maria. We need to get to the bottom of this. Uncle Mike, I'll be there. Sylvia couldn't say no, not without looking suspicious. She was trapped. I spent Saturday night preparing. I didn't just have the spreadsheet. I went back further. I found the credit card statements she had thrown in the recycling bin months ago that I had fished out, thinking I needed to shred them for security. I taped them to blank sheets of paper. I highlighted every single transaction that corresponded to a request for money from me. Request: Mom needs medicine, $200. Actual charge: Nordstrom, $198.50. Request: heater repair, $400. Actual charge: casino withdrawal, $400. I built a dossier, a thick, heavy binder of evidence that documented 5 years of financial abuse. Sunday morning arrived. The sky was gray and overcast. I put on my best blazer, armor for the modern woman, and picked up the binder. "Ready?" Matthew asked. He was coming with me this time. I needed a witness. "No," I said honestly, "but I have to do this. If I don't, I'll be the villain in their story forever." We drove to the house. There were 3 other cars in the driveway. The extended family had arrived. I walked in, Matthew a step behind me. The living room was crowded. Sylvia was sitting in her armchair, a tissue in her hand, looking frail. Bianca was next to her, holding her hand, glaring at me. Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike were on the sofa, looking stern. "Maria," Uncle Mike said, standing up. "Glad you came. Your mother says you've been withholding access to the accounts." "I haven't withheld anything," I said, placing the heavy binder on the coffee table with a loud thud. "I stopped paying the bills because I ran out of money, and I'm here to show you exactly where that money went." "Don't listen to her," Sylvia cried out, jumping up. "She's doctored them. She's trying to humiliate me." "Sit down, Sylvia," Aunt Sarah said, her voice sharp. She looked at the binder. "What is this, Maria?" "This," I said, opening the cover, "is the ledger. Bianca, you might want to pay attention. You're in here a lot." I turned the page to the first tab. "Let's start with the tax money from 2 years ago," I said. "The reason we are receiving foreclosure notices today." The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. All eyes were glued to the binder. I pointed to the first highlighted row. 2 years ago, March 15th, I transferred $2,000 to Mom specifically for the property tax installment. Here is the transfer confirmation from my bank. I flipped the page. Here is the transaction from Mom's account the very next day. Withdrawal, $2,000. And here, I flipped to a taped receipt, is a credit card payment for the exact same amount, paying off a balance that included a trip to Cabo for Bianca's 21st birthday. I looked at Bianca. Her face had drained of color. "You told me you won that trip in a contest," she whispered. "She lied," I said, "just like she lied about the transmission repair last year." I flipped ahead. $1,800, supposedly for the mechanic, actually went to Saks Fifth Avenue and Sephora. Aunt Sarah gasped. She reached out and pulled the binder toward her, her eyes scanning the pages frantically. "Sylvia, is this true? Did you spend the tax money on makeup?" Sylvia was trembling. She looked like a cornered animal. I deserved a treat. I was depressed. Maria doesn't understand the pressure I'm under." "The pressure of what, Sylvia?" Uncle Mike's voice was low and dangerous. "You haven't worked in 10 years. We've all been chipping in. I gave you $500. Last month for groceries. Where did that go?" I knew the answer. I flipped to the most recent month. "Here, Uncle Mike, $500 deposit, followed by a $500 payment to Elite Image Consulting." I looked at Bianca. "That's your manager, isn't it? Caleb's consulting fee." Bianca stood up, her chair toppling over. She looked at Sylvia with horror. "You told me you got a discount. You told me Caleb was doing it for free because he believed in my potential. You've been paying him with Uncle Mike's grocery money." "I was investing in you," Sylvia screamed, tears streaming down her face, real tears this time, tears of exposure. "I was trying to give you the life Maria never wanted. Maria is boring. She's happy being a servant in a kitchen. You were supposed to be the star." The words hung in the air, toxic and revealing. "I'm a chef, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not a servant, and I'm the only reason this house still has electricity." "Not anymore," Aunt Sarah said, closing the binder with a snap. She looked at Sylvia with a mix of pity and disgust. "This stops today. Sylvia, you have lied to all of us." "But the house," Sylvia wailed. "We're going to lose the house. Maria, you have to pay it. You have the credit." "No," I said, "I don't." I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "But I do have a solution." I turned to Bianca. She was crying silently, touching the sapphire necklace at her throat. "Bianca," I said, "give me the necklace." "What?" she choked out. "The necklace," I repeated, "and the Queen nameplate, and the iPad, and the designer bags in your room, we're going to sell them." "You can't," Sylvia shrieked. "Those are gifts." "Those are stolen goods," Uncle Mike corrected her. "Bought with money stolen from Maria and me." Bianca looked at Sylvia, then at me. She saw the truth now. The lifestyle she had been curated into was a fraud, built on my back and Sylvia's lies. Slowly, with shaking hands, she reached behind her neck. She unclasped the sapphire pendant. She walked over and placed it in my hand. It was warm from her skin. "Take it," Bianca whispered. "I don't want it anymore." "Good," I said, "because that's just the start." The fallout was swift and brutal, but necessary. We didn't save the house. The debt was too deep, the liens too numerous. The emergency sale I organized with Uncle Mike raised enough to pay off the immediate tax debt to avoid legal prosecution for fraud, but not enough to keep the property. Sylvia was forced to sell. After the bank took their share and the back taxes were paid, she was left with almost nothing. She moved into a small, one-bedroom apartment across town, one that Aunt Sarah found for her and monitors strictly. Uncle Mike controls her finances now. She gets a weekly allowance. No more spa days. No more investments in imaginary careers. As for Bianca, that was the surprise. The day after the confrontation, she showed up at my restaurant. I was prepping for dinner service, chopping onions. "I broke up with Caleb," she said, leaning against the doorframe. She looked different. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, no heavy makeup. He didn't want to manage someone who couldn't pay his retainer. "I'm sorry," I said, continuing to chop. "Don't be," she said. "He was a leech. Mom was right about one thing, though. I have been useless. I believed the hype." She paused. "I got a job, retail. It's minimum wage, but it's real." I put down the knife. "Good for you, B." "I wanted to return this," she said, sliding a small envelope across the stainless steel table. I opened it. Inside was the sapphire pendant. I had pawned the other items, the bags, the iPad, but I hadn't been able to let go of the necklace. I had given it to Uncle Mike to hold on to during the chaos. "Mike said you bought it back from the pile," Bianca said. "He said you paid him the pawn value so it wouldn't get sold with the rest of the stuff." "I did," I said. "It's yours," Bianca said. "It was always yours. I'm sorry I ever wore it." She turned to leave, but stopped. "You know, when I look at it now, I don't see a queen. I just see how hard you worked. I think I'm going to try being more like you, Maria." And she left. I picked up the necklace. The platinum felt cool and heavy in my hand. I walked to the small mirror in the employee locker room. I put it on. It sat perfectly against my collarbone. It didn't make me look like a queen or a star. It made me look like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side, scarred maybe, but standing tall. I didn't call Sylvia. I haven't spoken to her in 3 months. I hear from Aunt Sarah that she still complains about me, still tells anyone who will listen that I abandoned her. But her voice is small now, distant. It can't reach me. I have my own life. I have Matthew. I have my kitchen. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see a daughter who owes anyone anything. I see myself.